Thank you for joining. You are watching The Wrap Up. I am Akila Shahid, and I'm here with David Watts. And today we are going to be discussing social and racial injustice and inequality. Dr. Jennifer Eberhardt was just named one of 13 most influential professors at Stanford University. She teaches social psychology and the effects that it has on our lives every day. Why is it so important? She is doing ongoing research that can potentially save lives.
I'm Jennifer Eberhardt, and I'm a social psychologist. I work at Stanford University in the psychology department, and I study race and inequality. I've done research in the past looking at how race can influence visual processing, and so we've simply expose people to black faces or white faces, and we would do this subliminally. So the exposure would be so quick that people don't know that they've, just, been exposed to a black face or a white face. And we are interested in how that simple exposure to the face can influence people's ability to recognize visual objects. And so we will show them objects that are really blurry, and we slowly, in the continuum, we create objects that are more and more clear. And we'll do this with crime objects, and we'll do this with objects that aren't relevant to crime. And what we find is when you expose people briefly to black faces before they see these crime objects, that they're able to tell what those crime objects are with less information, with a blurrier picture. It's almost as though because blackness is so associated with crime, that you're ready to pick out these crime objects, out of the environment in a way that you're not if you're exposed to a white face, say.
I think what's daunting about the footage is the inability to see or identify the crime object when faced with a white face, but how easily the objects were identified once they were exposed to a black face. I think it shows, it shows the stereotypes and how they have an effect on an entire culture. It also makes me nervous about the policing ability. If people are not able to identify a weapon just because a white face has been presented, then I think that opens the door to a lot of crime that could happen, or crime that is happening and is just not being handled properly because of this stigma and this psyche that is disallowing us to see people's true nature. If you are a criminal, you commit crime. You could be white, black, yellow, green. It doesn't matter your ethnic background. The fact is that it's criminal activity, and we should be able to locate and identify criminal activity because of the activity, not from our psyches assuming or associating a color with crime.
But I think he goes deeper than that. I don't think it's we can say, if we have to say that the police are fallible, here's the problem. Police are human. They're people. And at the end of the day, those who wear the uniform, are victims of the mainstream media, just like the criminals and the victims that are victimized by the criminals are. What do I mean by that? Here's my take on this. The police and the people that wear that uniform don't live in a vacuum. So what happens is, as the individuals who were put into this test were more predisposed to pick out violent objects after seeing a darker skinned individual, so are the police more likely to think that a black man is more likely to do a crime because they themselves have also been brainwashed into thinking a darker skinned individual is more likely to do the crime. We are all victims of the mainstream media's biased approach. I think that's the problem. We are all victims of the mainstream media's violent approach, be it the police officer, public defender, the prosecutor, or the judge. It's just my opinion.
Let's see what else Miss Jennifer Eberhardt's studies show us.
With the work on the death penalty, we were interested in looking at the role of physical features of the defendants in death sentencing decisions. You know, the extent to, for black defendants, the extent to which they were perceived as being stereotypically black, and the defendants who looked or were rated to be more stereotypically black were more than twice as likely to receive a death sentence than those who were rated less stereotypically black.
Once again, I don't mean to bash, or maybe I do mean to bash the mainstream media. Judges do not live in a vacuum. When they have a jury and they're doing, say, a murder trial, and it's a really high-profile case, and they will sequester the jury, okay? What they usually do is they will keep the jury members in basically an isolated area without exposure to printed news articles, television, radio, things like that, because they don't want them to be influenced by outside propaganda. But it's too late. Anybody who's watched TV, anybody who really has listened to a radio or read a newspaper is influenced. So the person does not come in with any kind of no preconceived notions, as much as they try and weed those out when they're doing jury selection. The people, we all have biases. You try to get the people that are least biased. And when the judge is handing down those decisions, he's working with a bias. Sure, like the lady who actually has the scales, a lady of justice, whatever, is supposed to be blind, so her scales are even. But if you ever notice, the scales are never really even. There's always a bias. I would propose that when doing sentencing, the judge who actually found, or if the defendant was found guilty by the jury, that the person who does the sentencing is not the same judge. And what happens is the judge gets this information on the prisoner or the person who's been convicted, but he doesn't see them visually. He gets the facts, he gets a case number, so he doesn't know the person's name because the name is not relevant. He gets the facts of the case, and if it's a drug-related matter, and we all know that sentencing for cocaine carries less sentences than for crack. Crack is usually inner city, cocaine is more affluent. So you just put a C, that could stand for cocaine or crack. And what we do is we try to minimize any kind of demographic information on the sentencing. So all he has to do is go by a number that refers to the convicted person, the facts of the case, and what they're being sentenced for. And then he can determine the sentence. I guarantee you there will probably be less life sentences and less sentences more in line to fit that crime and more evenly across the board than if the judge gets to see the person visually. Because once again, bias comes into play.
Thank you for that, David. So the studies are showing that if you are of darker complexion or you have more Africanized features, that you may receive a harsher sentence just based off of that alone. That's alarming. That's very alarming. We entrust as society, we elect officials in positions because we trust their judgment. We trust that they're going to make a decision that will be for the betterment of society. Judges, prosecutors, police officers, and lawyers, we all give them the responsibility to deal with crime so that we can prevent it. But if they are making decisions and they are being influenced by their psyche, which they are unaware of, then we have situations that are happening now, where people are being judged based off of their color and not of the actual crime. So look at more of the studies that Ms. Jennifer Eberhardt is doing.
I think one of the issues that the work points to is that it's not the case just that the biases are so ingrained and that they're with us so early, but it's that those biases can actually influence our psyches. They can influence how we're processing even physical objects, how we're processing body movement. And so we want to use the work to help people to understand how race can influence us in lots of different ways, and in ways that are beyond sometimes our control and beyond our awareness. The stereotype of blacks as hostile, dangerous, and criminal is one of the strongest stereotypes in American society. One of the things that I'm focused on now is race and policing issues. It's a pressing issue, but it's also one of those issues that's been around for quite some time. We're at a moment in time where we can begin to make progress, I believe.
I am very, very optimistic about this move. I think that, Dr. Eberhardt is correct. We are in a time ripe for progress. I think that this is a good time for change, and these are, a few steps or ways that we can proceed. We need to have an open dialogue between the civilians and the police. We need to be able to discuss issues that may make us feel uncomfortable, but in the long run will affect and change lives. We are about preserving life and improving the quality of life. So I think that these steps are being taken in a positive direction, and I look forward to the progress, that is going to be made. There is going to be progress made. There is going to be change that is made. So, be aware, get engaged. And I hope that, this is the start for something very large and epic.
It's an interesting study. I mean, they invited her in. It's great. They wanted to know how they can make changes in the department. But I'd be curious to know if anything changes. I'd be curious to see, and not just from what the studies say, but from what people on the street say, what the citizenry says. Do they feel that this has made a difference? Do they feel the officers that work day to day in the inner city, in these cities that deal directly with urban crime and prevention, are taking these studies to heart? I'd like to know if the doctor's findings have really caused a change in police policies, practice, and procedures in the major metropolitan areas that are so prevalent to the crime that we hear about every day on the news. I hope they have. I hope she's able to wipe the slate clean and basically start a dialogue. So, at the wrap up, I don't just say this lightly to say, hey, this is what it is. We want to inspire and to motivate you to make a change. We like to think outside of the box, and we want you to start thinking as well. Our job is not to just deliver a subject or a situation, but to say, this is what's going on in your world. This is what you can do about it, and here are the tools to make a change. Whether you make that change is totally in your hands. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this? Please visit our Facebook page and let us know what you're thinking. We read that page every night when we're going to prepare for the next segment. We want to know what you're thinking about and what's important to you. Or join us or visit our website at therapupnewscast.com. and dialogue with us. We want to know. For the wrap up, I'm David Watts, and for Akila Shaheed, good night.